Hey, everybody, welcome to this special episode of the Buck Brief. On the scene with us now live is our friend Andrew Giuliani, formerly of the Trump White House, former New York State gubernatorial candidate, president of the Giuliani Defense Fund, and also friend of mine since we were both playing in the Pee Wee leagues for baseball or football or whatever sport you were playing back in grammar school, way back in the day.
Former constituent of you when you were class president as well. So.
Let's be honest, I was school president, Andrew, if we're talking about it. So, yes, indeed, I was school president. This is true. And then later on, you were school president some years later. You were about 5 years behind me. So, St. David's turns out some good.
Another Sexton beat me. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Another Sexton beat me. I was the vice president, but there were some ballot box issues.
Wow.
And we'll never truly know what the actual.
I didn't even remember this. Little Buck, also known as Keats, came through. You got to look at the overnight mail-ins, Andrew. The overnight mail-ins back in grammar school were a real thing.
Got me again.
All right. So now you're standing, just so everybody knows, and if you're not watching, if you're only listening, go to the Buck Brief on YouTube or Rumble. Type in Buck Brief on YouTube or Rumble, and you can see this yourself. Andrew is in front of the courthouse in New York City, where he's been reporting live all week of the Trump trial. Andrew, just give us the overview. Like, what are you seeing down there? How's it been going so far?
Well, I thought Thursday in particular, May 9th, was really, I think, the best day for the Trump team that I've seen so far. And it happened on a couple of fronts. Obviously, Stormy Daniels was introduced as the prosecution's witness on Tuesday. Tuesday, basically, the testimony ended where you had the Trump defense attorney, Susan Nicholas, finally getting Stormy Daniels to admit on the stand that money was indeed primarily a motivating factor. What a shocker there that for a porn star, money would be a motivating factor in telling their story. But Thursday, the cross-examination resumed, and Susan Nicholas was able to point the holes in the story throughout the years that Stormy Daniels has had with that alleged encounter in 2006. You can go back to 2006, 2011, when Stormy Daniels was saying at the time that there was never sex. Then fast forward to 2018, when Stormy Daniels was in fact saying that the alleged sexual encounter occurred, but said to Anderson Cooper that Donald Trump was nothing but a gentleman. I never felt threatened by it. Then you compare that to the testimony that happened on Tuesday with the prosecution asking Stormy Daniels questions, and she said that she felt threatened, that she was going to pass out, that blood was rushing to her head. Susan Nicholas did a great job in pointing out just how much that story has changed and really painted Stormy Daniels to be the liar that that honestly it seems like she may be. And then, Buck, we ended up fast-forwarding to later in the day when Madeline Westerhout, who was the executive assistant to President Trump from 2017 to 2019, worked in the White House, literally the outer Oval Office, a couple of steps away from the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. Madeline Westerhout was somebody who was fired because she was caught leaking information on what she thought was an off-the-record meeting. And she could have been a disgruntled former White House employee. I think the prosecution was relying on that. Instead, while the prosecution was asking Madeline Westerhout questions, she broke down and cried when they were talking about Melania and President Trump's relationship. She said that she never remembers President Trump laughing more than when Melania would come visit him in the Oval Office, and that they had a special relationship. And the prosecution, in my estimation at that point, Buck, seemed to end their questioning very, very quickly. The defense was able to pick up on that, and what could have been a damaging witness to President Trump turned out to be, I think, maybe his best character witness to date.
You're telling me all this, Andrew, because you're observing it and bringing us the ground truth, if you will, of this trial. It does strike me, though, how is, from the prosecution's perspective, or maybe from the defense perspective, but the prosecution introducing this stuff, how is any of this even relevant to a clerical business records dispute or allegation? You know what I'm saying? Like, why is any of this, Trump's relationship with Melania, the specificity of the alleged encounter with Stormy Daniels, I mean, is the judge just letting in anything that is prejudicial against Trump? Is that basically how this has been operating? What's your take?
It's a great point, Buck, and it's the reason why Todd Blanche, another one of the president's defense attorneys, has asked for a mistrial on multiple occasions now. The judge, not shockingly, has denied that. But really, it's turned into, I think, and for lack of a better word, Buck, this seems to be more of trying to smut shame Donald Trump, if you will. They're trying to, because again, from a legal perspective, there's still no underlying felony that's been presented. So I think they're presenting to the jury basically all the different ways that they believe that Donald Trump is unworthy, all the different ways that they may be able to actually sully him in the eyes of the jury, even if they're not actually discussing any underlying criminal charges in all this. And that's why, frankly, the Madeline Westerhout testimony, I think, was so strong for President Trump, because if that, in fact, is the prosecution's goal and the judge is allowing him to do that, then, man, was it a complete 180, I think, that Madeline Westerhout might have turned on the prosecution in terms of what their expectations are. And, Buck, you and I know what this ends up coming down to is there a juror in there who is unbiased? Is there a juror in there who has not predetermined the outcome of this case based on what they know about Donald Trump? And if there is, in fact, a juror that is unbiased, then he gets acquitted. It's that simple, well, looking at what's been presented so far.
Let's get to that a little bit more in detail and where you think this is going in just a second. But first up, a word from our sponsor here, Bear Creek Arsenal. I'm a gun guy. I've got a gun safe full of guns, and I got to get another gun safe now because I've got so much Bear Creek Arsenal that I've been picking up. Bear Creek Arsenal firearms are absolutely phenomenal. They are the highest quality at the best price you're going to find anywhere in the firearms industry. Whole range of calibers. Their uppers, their upper receivers, and their uppers for AR-15s are absolutely phenomenal. They have premium calibers, a fraction of the price of the competition. I know these guys. I visited with them at their factory in North Carolina. They are making great guns. I love my Grizzly, which is my 9mm. I use it as my sidearm out at the range doing 2 gun drills. It's fantastic. I've also got the BC-15. Highly, highly recommend. Just go see what they've got on the website for yourself. And remember, you pick out what you like, you buy it, they send it to your FFL, and you go pick it up. It's easy. Go to bearcreekarsenal.com/buck. That's bearcreekarsenal.com/buck. Use promo code BUCK for 10% off your first order. That's bearcreekarsenal.com/buck. Promo code BUCK for 10% off your first order. So, Andrew, you mentioned if there's one honest juror, you at least get a hung jury. Do you think there's any chance of an acquittal? I know with all the things arrayed against him, it seems unlikely, but have you wiped away that possibility, or could you see this jury recognizing how absurd this whole thing is and just effectively shutting it down with a not guilty verdict? What do you think?
Well, it's tough because you and I come at it from as rational human beings that know how to look at evidence and try to basically deconstruct it for what it is, whether it's true, whether it's not. When you're looking in the eyes of a Manhattan jury who, again, 86% voted for Joe Biden in 2020, 79% voted for Alvin Bragg to become the district attorney in Manhattan in New York County, then it's tough to imagine there actually being an acquittal considering those numbers and just how much I think the jury could be stacked against President Trump. But if they are unbiased and if there are enough of them where they can actually continue to make the case to themselves while they are going through this, then look, the facts back up an acquittal. The facts back up an acquittal. So I guess that's the best way to put it. And Buck, I've been looking at the jury, trying to get tells from them. You can tell that they've been told do not give any reaction because it's very, very difficult to get a reaction. There's only about 2 or 3 of the jurors that will look at President Trump often. The other ones kind of keep their eyes on either the prosecutor or defense if they're asking questions and the witness. So I'm trying to get whatever tells I possibly can, and there are good poker faces on that jury so far.
And I know that there have been a couple of motions made by the defense for mistrial. Those have not been granted yet. When do we think this trial wraps up, Andrew? I mean, you're down there, you're speaking to everybody, you're seeing it unfold. When is this thing going to come to a conclusion?
So the judge yesterday, before he dismissed the jurors, said that he believed that actually they were ahead of schedule. So in going what they were looking at pre-trial, then we could be talking about 3 more weeks. I mean, it all depends on how long is Cohen's testimony. There's talk that it could be 2 days. There's talk that it could be 4 days, which would then spill in to May 20th, the week of Memorial Day. So, and looking at all this, I would guess probably last week of May, early June, that we wrap this thing up.
And the Cohen testimony that everyone's expecting on Monday, what can you tell us about how that's supposed to go and what this is about?
Well, the interesting thing, Buck, is seeing how all the prosecution's witnesses that had dealt directly with Michael Cohen had said on the record to the jury, and sometimes even when the prosecution was questioning them, that they had lost faith in Michael Cohen because they had caught him in lies. Hope Hicks, I think, said that Michael Cohen used to like to consider himself a fixer, but if he fixed anything, it was because he broke it in the first place. Keith Davidson said that Keith Davidson, being Stormy Daniels' former attorney, had said that he had lost faith in Michael Cohen because he had caught him lying to him on multiple occasions. So I wonder if the prosecution is almost trying to set the expectations so low with Michael Cohen, trying to say that this is a guy who had lied, he had been convicted, he's done his time, and now he is reformed. And that may be what they're trying to do with regards to Cohen, because I can tell you right now, the defense has so much on cross-examination with Michael Cohen, not just what he was saying 10, 15 years ago, what he was doing then, how he had perjured himself, but also what he's been saying recently on his own podcast and how he's been going after President Trump. That, in fact, has been a lot of what the mistrial and lifting the gag order conversation has been between Todd Blanche and Judge Merchan. So it's obviously going to be fascinating, but I'm very interested to see how the prosecution tries to build up Michael Cohen after so many of their witnesses have completely torn him down and has basically shown him for the lack of credibility that I think we all know that Michael has.
Do you get any sense about the concern that exists on the Trump side that if Trump continues to push back against the, in my view and many others, completely unconstitutional gag order, that he actually could be held in contempt, not just for a fine, but for some kind of period of incarceration? Is that lingering in the background? Because I know that Eric Adams, mayor of New York, said the discussion has been had.
Yeah, I mean, look, that discussion is being had with the Trump team. I know. Look, you know the president, Buck. He's a double down kind of guy, and I think there is even some conversation is in what does it politically look like if President Trump does in fact get held in contempt, and then you're talking about potentially going to jail for what we believe is violating the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. So that conversation is being had. We'll see if it gets to there. I know it's also one of those things I think the prosecution is looking at and saying, do we actually want to go and touch that potential third rail? Could that actually help President Trump even more? Again, we can't talk about this trial without pointing out the connection to the Biden Justice Department right there. When you see Colangelo, who is out there doing some of the questioning, some of the cross-examination, this is a guy who was number 3 in the Biden Justice Department at Justice Maine in Washington, D.C. And he took a demotion that had never happened in the history of our American judicial system to become an assistant district attorney on this case. So you know the prosecution is thinking about the politics of this at every single step, and as well as obviously the Trump team.
Andrew, doing great work. Hold for 1 second. Just one more word from our sponsor here. We're talking about legal defense and what happens if you're not Donald Trump. You don't have the resources, the power to fight back. You could get in trouble for speaking up at a school board meeting, speaking up on campus, speaking up in your office. If your constitutional rights are violated, you need to know that there is something for you out there, but you got to take action now. Patriot Defender. Patriot Defender is no-cost legal defense right now at a time when we need it most for those who have their rights violated. IRS audit assistance, for example, is part of this. Concealed carry weapon defense, if you have to use a weapon in defense of yourself and your family. The legal costs can be covered. PatriotDefender.com. patriotdefender.com. The only membership of its kind that goes beyond defense for concealed carry weapons. Patriot Defender will cover your constitutional rights and provide you with a defense. Go to patriotdefender.com for more details. Andrew, where can everyone go? You're doing great work from down at the courthouse. Where can everyone go to follow what you're doing and see how this plays out?
Yeah, go on my social media feeds at Andrew H. Giuliani on X, on Truth. I was inspired basically to do this as I was in the courtroom, and I saw that CNN had completely misreported what Keith Davidson, Stormy Daniels' former attorney, had said. Keith Davidson's full quote was he had lost faith in Michael Cohen because he had caught Michael Cohen lying to him twice. On CNN's ticker, it said Keith Davidson lost faith in Michael Cohen. They ended the quote and they said, in the context of the repayment. And I said, it's just not fair to the American people. Look, Buck, you know, I've got my opinions. I'm biased toward President Trump. I had the honor of working for him for 4 years in the White House. I've known him as long as I've known you. But I want to at least present what the witnesses are saying, what the prosecution is saying. And then in parentheses, you'll see my opinion as well. But go to @Andrew H. Giuliani where you can follow it all.
I trust the guy, and I've known him now. We've known each other like 30 years, Andrew. Think about that. 30 years we go back at this point. We're getting old, dude. We're getting old. I
know. We still got our hair right now, though, so that's pretty good. I guess we'll have to continue this conversation throughout the generations and do the side-by-side.
I love it. And we're going to have you back to talk more about Trump. So thank you for all the work you're doing on this, and let's hope that this trial goes toward justice, although I'm not counting on it. I'm worried, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful we'll win this fight. Andrew Giuliani, everybody go follow him. And Andrew, thanks again.